Still to come tonight on the new music, Genesis, Peter Gabriel, and more.
3rd and 24th, Genesis was in town at Maple Leaf Gardens, drawing thousands of fans to their 2 sold-out shows. Those concerts were followed a week later by Peter Gabriel, former frontman of Genesis and the person who was called the brains behind the band. I got together with Mike Rutherford of Genesis to talk about life after Peter Gabriel.
The years ticked by up till the Lamb album when he left. It was slowly changing, and songs were much more by 1 or 2 or 3 people. And in fact, if we'd actually put who wrote what, when Pete actually left, there wouldn't have been such sort of cries of, well, that's it for them, you know, as there were. Because they'd have seen that a lot of favourite songs were written by, or at least had nothing to do with Pete. It was an era. I think everything we did with Pete in that sort of much more theatrical stage, I really enjoyed. I really believed in, bar a couple of things. But I mean, that was an era. We wouldn't do, even if we were with Pete, we wouldn't be doing it now.
Right. What was the reason he left? Did he give you any reason?
Yeah, I mean, it's a million reasons, but basically I think the most important reason, which no one really says, is that there comes a point when you no longer want to be in a group. You know, a group is always a compromise, and there just comes a time when you want to work on your own.
Do you feel compromised now?
Yeah, the group's always a compromise. Don't mean I'm feeling frustrated. It's pretty satisfying at the moment. It's just that what you lose in terms of compromise, you have to gain in terms of sort of combined effort. And the 3 of us produce something together when we write that no individual could actually do on their own, which is really... And the last album felt very good to do, actually.
Mike, can you remember buying your first guitar?
Yeah.
What's the story behind that?
Well, actually, at the start, the first one was just... the second one's got more of a story. The first one was a little nylon one I got when I was 8. Parents bought me. And then when I was about 10, I went to get an electric guitar. Which maybe I was now probably a bit younger. And I didn't realise, you see, I didn't realise that electric guitars had amplifiers. I'd always seen cartoons, you know, when it was like the son of the family playing in the living room with all the noise and the father complaining, you know. And he had a plug from his guitar in the cartoon, used to go in the wall, right? So I didn't know there were guitars and amplifiers. I'd never heard of amplifiers. I thought they were like acoustic guitars or electric guitars. You know, electric guitars are just different. So I went into the shop to buy one, and he said, "What sort of amplifier do you want?" And I said, "I don't want an amplifier, I want an electric guitar, you know, the one you plug in the wall." And I got quite a shock.
Outside the concert last week, we saw some familiar faces. The regular people who hang around down the street from the Gardens selling buttons, T-shirts, and tickets for the show. While scalping is definitely illegal, the vendors who sell T-shirts and buttons don't worry much about getting busted. They're taking money away from the band, not CPI or the Gardens. The Genesis paraphernalia is bootleg, produced without copyright or authorization. Vendors make a killing on it, too. A button that costs about 27 cents to produce goes for $2. At a 2-day event, the amount of money that changes hands runs into 5 figures.
I'm sure between all of us, a good 10 grand was turned over.
While Genesis isn't too worried about their official merchandise losing money to the vendors outside, they are concerned about another aspect.
The fans are getting ripped off. They're spending a lot of money. Occasionally we send a couple of roadies out to sort of push people away, because they sell such rubbish normally.
Has your newfound success over the last 3 years changed the members of the band at all?
I don't think everything changes you, but I mean, I'm not particularly conscious of... You see, everyone talks about newfound success. If you actually look at the Genesis sort of history, we've never ever gone whoosh anywhere. You know what I mean? It's always been slow, and some years have gone a bit faster than others. But there's never been a period where we've suddenly, like a group has a monster hit single or something, and you suddenly roar up from nowhere.
Well, isn't Duke a monster album for you?
Yeah, but if you look at the albums before and you look at the sort of curve, I'm sounding very technical, you know. I mean, I don't really look at it this way. I don't look at curves and graph. But if you look at our sort of growth in Canada, yeah, this is one of the bigger jumps. But it's still not out of, you know, it's still not crazy. It's still something that's been building. It's not from nowhere in a sense, if you know what I mean.
Following Genesis on this concert tour is a new book called Genesis, I Know What I Like. And a few days ago, Jeannie Becker got together with the author of it, Armando Gallo.
Armando, how did you first link up with Genesis?
I saw them when they were really working in little clubs in London, and they were very shy, and and they were struggling musically and everything, but you could see the magic there, you know. You could definitely see it. And the first time I saw them, I gave them a great reviews, and I've been following them ever since. They were opening for a band called Van der Graaf Generator. That's the band I went to see. I'm not a fan, so I've been described a freak of Genesis freak, a Genesis fan, anything. I'm not really. I'm trying to do, I think that with Genesis, I've been knowing them so well. I followed their evolution so closely, and they let me become friends. With Genesis, it's been always it was always a beautiful story of a struggle, determination, and in wanting to become the best band in the world.
We hear a lot of stories about the crazy life that rock and roll bands lead, like in Tony Sanchez's book, Up and Down with the Rolling Stones. He got into some crazy stuff. Is it crazy like that with Genesis?
I think maybe they're the most boring band to be on tour with. In a way, it's great. It's great because I suppose they're very, very calm people. You know, they just like to. They're not party goers at all. You know, or there's nothing really happening. No wild things happening with Genesis. And I suppose they don't play rock and roll, and that's another thing, you know, and I suppose they play a good brand of pop music.
There's so many different biographies written about rock bands, whether they be authorized or unauthorized. What makes your book so different? What gives you an edge on the situation?
I think I tried to be very honest. I tried really hard. Yeah, I took back to 1963, you know, to when Tony and Peter met at Charterhouse in the school. So they spent 3 or 4 years at school, in this boarding school in England, you know. So it was a lot of information. I had hundreds of hours of interviews on tape. I went to see their parents, I interviewed their parents, I went to the school, I interviewed the people that remember them when they were at school. And I realized then that there were already special kids because they were kind of unusual. People didn't understand them, you know.
Armando's an old friend. He's put about 3 years of his life into this book, and he couldn't get anyone to publish it in America, so he's doing it himself.
Do you feel it's going to sell?
No, he's not selling very much. But at least he's doing it the way he wants it. He's got control. You know, he's brought out the final edition for he has to get it printed in Italy, I think, in order to get it done properly.
I realized there are quality people that believe in quality more than quantities, you know, and I realized that I should give them a good quality book, you know, with semi-gloss paper, you know, and good printings, and to do so, I had to put together an expensive book.
Coming up on the new music, an exclusive interview with Peter Gabriel. Gabriel was in town playing to a packed house at Maple Leaf Gardens. His latest LP is at number 6 on the album chart, and his single, Games Without Frontiers, is rapidly becoming a hit. It's interesting to note that when he released this new album, his American record company dropped him like a hot potato, hinting that he was committing commercial suicide.
Well, I think initially I knew they didn't like it. They sent someone over, an A&R person, who, other than attempting to encouraged me to make one track sound like the Doobie Brothers, didn't really like the way it was going. I think they felt that with my second album I moved a little to the left, and with this album that I'd gone off the edge of the universe, and it wasn't an area that they were particularly familiar with or wanted to be involved with, and didn't think was going to generate them any income. So both the album and myself as an artist were given the big elbow. So, which, I mean, I thought they would just put it out and not bother with it. But it's fine with me, because if they don't want to work it, then maybe someone else can. And then the album, particularly in Europe, has done very well. So that's been somewhat encouraging. And in fact, I think Atlantic did try and buy it back again. So there's a certain amount of self-satisfaction from that.
What point have you reached now with this new album?
The main thing for me was just I spent some time reappraising all the way that I wrote the stuff. Normally I write things, chords, melodies first, and the lyrics are sort of on a separate parallel course. And this time I tried rhythm first. I've been given a little rhythm box, which is fairly simple. A really mindless idiot can operate it. But it still allows you to program your own patterns. And because it was hanging in the music, the rhythm, what I put on top of it was much simpler. as a result. So the style of writing changed.
Ever since 1975, there have been a variety of rumors floating around as to why you left Genesis. I talked with Mike Rutherford the other day. He said you left possibly because you didn't want to be in a group anymore, that you felt compromised.
I think there were a whole variety of reasons, really. I think that would be one way of looking at it. Personally, I didn't like what I felt I was becoming in that role, and I did feel that the thing itself, because of its success, was becoming a little more conservative. You know, now if I want to do something which appears stupid or unnecessarily dangerous or risky to the other people I work with, I'm entitled to do it because it's fundamentally my thing which I'm putting at risk. Whereas in a band, in a sort of democratic setup, which we were, it was other people's livelihoods that I was fucking up.
What's the concept behind the song Games Without Frontiers?
The idea that perhaps adults seen as kids and countries behaving toward each other in a way that adults are unable to behave, so that, i.e. through war, etc., different set of moral codes.
While he was in town to promote his Face Value album, Phil and I dropped by one of the local music stores to do a little browsing around. Collins lives and breathes drumming 24 hours a day, an obsession that started when he was a small boy growing up in middle-class London. Phil, can you still remember being 5 years old and your parents buying you a tin drum?
Oh, yeah.
And having to hide it downstairs because you were making so much noise on it?
Yeah. No, I mean, I've never really wanted to do anything else, to be honest. In fact, I know I never wanted to do anything else. I mean, I was given the drum. I remember my Uncle Ernie giving me the drum, and then my other two uncles made me a drum kit out of, with triangles, tambourines, you know, they just made 2 bits of wood like that and got 4 poles, and they stuck as much percussive stuff on it as they could, and it all fitted into a suitcase.
Any kid who would trade his train set for a set of drums had to be really hooked on it.
Yep, I sold me drum kit. We sold me a train set, and my mum and dad put the rest of the money, and I got my first proper drum kit.
Who were your heroes back then?
Drumming-wise?
Yeah.
Well, I remember the first 2 records I played. I used to get the record player behind me and turn out as loud as I could and just play along. My heroes were, went from Brian Bennett of the Shadows, Bobby Elliott of the Hollies, Robert Henry with the Roulettes, who's now got his own drum store in London.
Now that you're at the level that you've achieved, who are people that you have respect for?
Tony Williams, who scares me to death. I mean, she was actually at the Townhouse when I was recording my album, and I actually left the room because I was so scared of him.
How do you feel about the powerhouse rock drummers, people like Moon and Bonham?
Moon, I got great respect for Moon. In fact, I rang up Pete Townsend when Moon died and said, could I join? But unfortunately, he'd already had Kenny Jones, so. But it started off, actually, a relationship with Townsend, and I'm doing his next album, so it was worth it in the end. But I mean, I would like to have played with The Who, because I think Kenny Jones is a bit lame.